Hi, and welcome. My name is Drew Flaherty, and I'm a current first-year student in the MS HCI program here at Georgia Tech. We wanted to provide a behind-the-scenes look at what it's like to actually apply. And so we'll go through the application process here together today. The goal of this video is to help those who might be interested in applying feel more comfortable before starting their own application process. And I'll share a few tips on some of the required materials for the HCI program, but I encourage you to look at the resources available across our social channels to get a better understanding of what you need to do when filling out your own application. With that, let's get started. So here we are on the graduate admission application homepage. If you're a first-time user, you'll create an account. Since I set up a test account, we'll go ahead and log in. And once you log in, you'll see a screen like this. If it's your first time logging in, this might be blank. So you would hit start a new application. But once you have your application started, it'll populate here. I'll open my application. And there are essentially two sections to the graduate application at Georgia Tech. The first section is all of the general information that the graduate school needs for your application. So that includes things like your personal information, your employment, and your academic history. The other section is the section that is unique to the HCI program and the materials that are required specifically for that. In order to load the requirements for the HCI, you first have to select it as your program in your generic application portal. So you would go to program selection, and again, the first time that you load this would be blank. In order to choose a program, you would hit update selection, and you would select master's, because that's the level of degree that the HCI program is in. And then you would go in and you would click one of 4 HCI programs. These 4 options are the 4 tracks that we talked about in prior videos. I won't spend any time talking about how to choose your track, but I encourage you to look at resources like Medium, where our current students provide their perspective on how they chose their track and what it means to them. It's a resource that I used myself when I was applying. Once you have your track selected, you'll hit update, and then your program-specific application pieces will open up on this left-hand side. A quick note before we get into some of the materials that you need to generate, let's talk about letters of recommendation. You're required to have 3 letters of recommendation, and we encourage you to be professional and courteous to those who you might seek a recommendation from by providing ample time for them to write a strong letter of recommendation for you. Personally, my suggestion would be giving them at least 2 weeks to write a letter for you. When considering someone who might recommend you, you want to think about professors, advisors, or supervisors that can speak on some of the projects that they've observed you work on and know your skills and the qualities that make you a strong applicant to the HCI program. Now let's get into some of the materials that you need to produce for your HCI application. So if we click into the Human-Computer Interaction tab, it now loads all of the things that we're required to produce as part of our application. First, let's talk about the portfolio. If you're applying to the Industrial Design or Literature, Media, and Communications tracks, you are required to submit a portfolio. If you're applying to the Interactive Computing track, a portfolio is not required. However, it is a great way for you to highlight some of your past projects and how it relates to your interest in HCI. And if you're applying to the Psychology track, you are not required to have a portfolio. Regardless of what track you choose, here are some tips for building out your portfolio. The first is that it's okay if you don't have years and years of project experience, but the projects that you choose to include in your portfolio should be an honest reflection of your role and the skills that you have that contributed to those projects. And the second piece of advice is that in each example that you provide, you want to be able to clearly articulate how you got to the final design process. You want to be concise and direct in your storytelling and explain the problem, the methods that you chose to understand that problem, and the results or outcomes from that process. Now that we've covered portfolio, let's talk briefly about the statement of purpose. The statement of purpose is an admissions classic. When you're filling out your statement of purpose, it should be academic in tone. Regardless of your background, you can construct a strong statement of purpose. It is important that your statement of purpose is grounded in real, tangible work that you've done and the skills that you feel relate to human-computer interaction. You'll also want to spend some time thinking about the projects that you've worked on in the past and how they might influence work that you want to do in the future, especially if accepted into the HCI program. And finally is the personal video. The personal video is your opportunity to highlight your personal unique voice. This part of the application is where you can have the most fun. I would encourage you to not use information that reviewers can see on your statement of purpose, portfolio, or resume, but instead use the video as an opportunity to define who you are as a person, professional, and a potential student. This is an opportunity to share up to 2 minutes of who you are and what makes you unique. Have fun with it. And one quick note about all of these materials and the use of AI. You want to avoid using AI to write or construct any of these pieces. While AI can be great at providing feedback and insights on some of the work that you do across your projects, it is not something that you want representing your own work. I would encourage you to lean on friends, family, or other academic professionals to review your materials instead of having AI be a part of your application process. Once you have filled out all of the required materials for the HCI portion of your application, you can go to submit your payment information and pay your application fee. Your application isn't complete until you've paid the application fee. Once you've paid to submit your application, you might be at the hardest step of the application journey, which is the waiting. I know how difficult it can be to wait on the admissions decision. However, you've done the hard work already. I encourage you to take a few weeks to step away from the computer and enjoy yourself. You should be proud of the work that you put in to applying to Georgia Tech. Application updates will not be provided until the application decisions, which are released in early March. You put in the hard work of applying, and that itself is something to celebrate. I hope that this video has been useful in your application journey. Best of luck putting your materials together. See you next time.